Good evening, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. We are going to take a slight break at the very beginning. We're waiting for the assistant principal for the 10th grade class, Adrian Sanders. She's going to be here just so you all can put a face with a name. To start off, my name is Rose Mitchell. I am 10th grade counselor for students whose last name are A through K. And this is
Mark Millett, and I am students L through Z, last name.
So tonight, we're going to go through some general things that we think are helpful for the 10th grade year and also planning for 11th and 12th grade. Obviously, this year we did have a change in our counselor assignments, and the reason behind that is we just wanted to kind of have a more developmental approach. What we found is that sometimes it's challenging when maybe your 12th grade counselor, you're dealing with college applications, but then you have a 9th grade parent who definitely wants to meet with you because their child's having some adjustment issues. But sometimes when things are time sensitive with like the college applications and things, we just felt like we really weren't meeting the students and the parents' needs. So that was the rationale behind that. And so we have 2 counselors for each grade level. And I know for the parents who have multiple students and dealing with the different different counselors, that can be challenging, but we hope in the long run this will be better meet our students' needs. So to begin, our agenda tonight, we're going to go over it's not working. So we're going to go over there we go. Okay, the transcript, academic support, activities, career exploration, option after high school, and this is a pretty heavily tested year for your students, and we'll get into that as the presentation goes on. We're going to talk about the practice tests we have for some of the standardized tests, along with some of the end-of-course tests that are required for graduation. So hopefully everyone received a transcript in the mail last week. That was to number one, make sure that everyone knows what the transcript looks like. A lot of your students started building their course history and GPA. If they were at the junior high and took some classes at the junior high level, like foreign language or maybe algebra, a couple of students maybe taking personal finance. And then obviously last year, they also had classes that configured into their GPA. The transcript that we sent you is not the transcript that goes to colleges. The transcript that goes to colleges will only have the cumulative or weighted GPA on the transcript. But this transcript we needed to send to you so you can have all of the information that is required for graduation. Most importantly are those end-of-course tests. For those, last year was the first year that our students had to have a minimum point total for graduation for end-of-course tests. Prior to that, we had the Ohio graduation test, and they had to pass 5 of those tests. Starting with last year's graduating class, there are 7 tests that the students have to take, end-of-course tests. They're in Algebra 1, Geometry, English 9, English 10, American History, Government, Biology. I can't remember if I said that one, but those are the seven areas. Last year, your students, if they were in algebra, they took the Algebra 1 and the English 1. If they were in geometry, they took geometry and they took the Algebra 1 at the junior high. And so that point total has to be 18. So we wanted to make sure that especially for those who maybe had older children that graduated at a different time, there are different requirements. We wanted you all to know how to look for those end-of-course test scores. And they, on the transcript, they're in the bottom right-hand corner here. And this is obviously a student that is in their senior year now. Most of the tests will be complete by their end of this year. And then the last one is typically government. But if you have students in AP European history, that American history test will be taken next year. And then obviously the credits, total credits needed for graduation are 21 and a half. If you think about it, the majority of our students have 6 classes a year, multiply that times 4, 24 credits. So the 21 and a half point total is not credit total isn't challenging to me. This student this is a junior, they have 22.25 credits, but they're still required to have a full schedule. And so that's something a lot of times that our students have to get used to their parents, because they're like, well, I have my credits, I only need English and math. Yeah, but you need a full schedule. And so just know that that is what will be required. So the next slide, we are breaking down all of the graduation requirements. There are four units of math that are 4 units of math, 4 units in credits of English, and then 3 of science, 3 of social studies. In the sciences, they are specific with physical science, which your students will meet by taking scientific investigations, or if they took biology as a 9th grader, chemistry will be meeting that physical science requirement, the life sciences, biology, and then they have that third science. With the social studies, they're required to take world history, American history, and government. And so, like for those students that are in AP European history, they'll take American history next year. And then those are the 18 points that I was referring to with the air test and the course test. And so the Algebra 1, the Geometry, English 1, English 2, American history, government, and biology. And within those subject areas, there is a minimum point requirement. If there's a concern, Ms. Sanders actually is the administrator in charge of testing. We pretty much will wait until the end of 10th grade year, because that's when the majority of tests will be taken, and we'll let you know if there's a concern and maybe a student may have to retake one test to meet that minimum point requirement. When, just to kind of go back a little bit, we are meeting with the 10th graders throughout the end of September and into like the second week of October. So they're getting the same presentation that you all are receiving. The one thing I thought was interesting, I had a presentation today, and some of the students, they thought that certain things were required for graduation, so I think it's important to clear this up. A lot of students thought volunteer hours are required for graduation. They're not. They're strongly encouraged, but not required for graduation. Another one that is definitely important for college, but not required for graduation, is a global language. A global language is not required for graduation. So when the students do take those, when they take the global languages, that does count in the 5.5 elective credit requirement. But as far as requirements for graduating from the state of Ohio, it's not required. Okay, so when talking with students, I think it's really important for everyone to set realistic and attainable goals. For some students, they got off to a very good start in 9th grade. They maybe, were able to get the GPA that they wanted, and for others, maybe it was a rougher start. And so I think it's important for students to maybe say, okay, if last year I had A's, B's, C's, and D's, maybe this year I want to make sure that I'm aiming for all A's, B's, and C's. For a student that maybe had, A's, B's, and C's, okay, maybe I'm trying not to get a C this year. But I tell students, if they're setting those goals, they also have to change their approach to how maybe things went last year. Utilizing academic support is one of the, there's things to brag about for Sycamore High School. To be able to say after school from 2:30 until 3:30, we have a teacher Monday through Thursday here in every subject area that's available to help students. Sometimes students will say it's a stigma attached to it, but I let them know the students that are on National Honor Society, they're going to focus. They're in that math lab in the morning between 6:45 and 7:15. Please make sure that you encourage your students to utilize the supports that are available. In addition to focus after school, we also have fast track. Fast track is where an older student is paired with typically a younger student, and they help them with organization, planning out maybe a schedule for the week. Okay, you have this project that's due next week. How are you going, let's do a little bit on it each day. Maybe, okay, you need to prepare for this test. You have to turn this assignment in. They log into their Blackboard account every day. So that is a good way to assist students that we have available. That is during the school day. Typically, it is recommended by a counselor or a teacher, but we also have parents that have said they want their student in fast track. One story I always tell is about a student who was a senior. He was in fast track, 9th grade, 10th grade. 11th grade, he was like, Miss Mitchell, he really helped me. Can I please go back to fast track? Absolutely, you sure can. And they were actually in the same grade. And I was really surprised that they were able to, that he, it wasn't like I'm embarrassed because I have a student that helps me. He just realized that was very helpful. It's no different than being in a study group and having someone help you. And so he stayed in fast track from 9th to 12th grade, and it was very helpful for him. And so, although it's typically for 9th and 10th graders, we will allow students who are upperclassmen to do that. The guided study hall, that is more so for a student that is struggling in a specific subject area. So if a student is struggling in math but they have the organizational skills, that's not an issue. They're doing well in their English, science, and social studies, but they need that math support. We have the guided study hall. That's also during the school day. We have it in the hub, and even though we have it specifically for subject areas, for almost all bills, we have a teacher from each subject area available. So if a student is assigned to the math teacher but has a question in English or in social studies, they can utilize those teachers as well, because we have them in the same area. So, and the most important thing is communicating with the teachers. The students are struggling. I'm struggling. Have you talked to your teacher? No. Okay, well that's the first step. A lot of times, students will have a different interaction with the teacher when they're going after school one-on-one, or maybe it's a couple of students there versus when they're in front of a class. And so you're asking the teacher and being there. The teacher wants to know if the student is struggling and wants to be there to help them. But obviously, we'll get into all the clubs and activities that we have. We have a lot of different clubs and activities, which means sometimes our teachers maybe aren't available after school. And so that's when we have the focus help available. Because we know sometimes they have those obligations after school. I'm going to take a break right now and introduce Ms. Adrienne Sanders. She's our assistant principal.
Good evening. Hi, I'm Adrienne Sanders. I oversee the 10th grade with Mrs. Mitchell and Mr. Millette. Just a couple quick things. I think they talked to you a little bit about end-of-course state testing. That's kind of a big topic that I'll start to have conversations with your children this year. Majority of our 10th graders will have 4 state tests that they'll do in April. So that's a busy time for them, but we want to make sure that they feel supported. So in April, majority of students will take English, geometry, American history, and biology. And those all go towards their graduation points. So I think some of you I actually recognize we had a testing meeting back earlier in the year, so there's a lot of information about that. So if you have any questions, don't ever hesitate to email or call. I can go over much more in depth about that whole process. But you are in good hands. Mrs. Mitchell and Mr. Millette are great. They've been wonderful to work with. They have your kids' best interest at heart, and that's why we're here. At the end of the day, we want to see your student be successful. All of their pathways are going to look different. It's a great opportunity to start thinking about colleges and careers and, thinking about taking the ACT and all these new things that, as I met them last year as freshmen, it's that transition into the high school. Well, now they're not freshmen anymore. So we want to make sure to start having those conversations and start thinking about the future, because it's very exciting, because there's so many great opportunities for them. So again, if you ever have any questions or anything, don't hesitate to email or call. And like I said, you are in great hands, because Mrs. Mitchell and Mr. Millette do a fantastic job. So thank you for coming.
Thank you, ma'am. And I just have to say Ms. Sanders is awesome to work with. She is very responsive, always making sure that we are connecting with the kids. And so, ditto you, and being a good hands with you as well. Okay, back to the presentation. Just quickly, this is just an abbreviated version of the focus schedule, but we even have where the teachers, which days the teachers are there. This just shows the math and Mondays in the hub. But for example, if your student has Ms. Brown, they know Ms. Brown can be found in the hub from 2:30 to 3:30. The focus schedule is one of the pages towards the end of the presentation we made sure we attached, so that we wanted to make sure you all had that handy. Getting involved. The one thing about getting involved, there's no excuse for our students not to get involved. Today when I met with the students and I was showing them the club list that we have, I was just going through, because this is numerous, over 50 clubs that we offer. And so I was like, this is the Magic Club. You all have the Magic Club. I said, K-pop. K-pop, I didn't know you all had K-pop. I don't know what K-pop is, but and so it's no excuse for them not to get involved. For those students who don't find this club that they like, they can start one. I'm sure that's how we got the K-pop clubs. I'm sure teacher did start it. And so it's important that's a way for students to really just feel connected to the school. That's why we try to make sure we have some of the different things that are available. Obviously, we have some of the big things, like we have the band and athletics, but if that's not where your student fits, we have something for everyone, I think, here, and I pride Sophomore on that. Outside of school, volunteering, different camps, the one thing that I should have thought about doing a screenshot of, on our website, if you go to the counseling page, if you could make a note of this, in the bottom left-hand corner is student opportunities. We are flooded with emails from colleges and different organizations about different opportunities they have in the summer and different camps and things of that nature. We have all of that on our student opportunities page on our website. Like, for example, one is shadowing at one of the local hospitals. So I had students like, I really didn't want to do medicine, because she was able to do that job shadowing. So sometimes it's not even something you're involved in, it can maybe help eliminate something from the list to know maybe what's a good fit. So we also have some internships that are available. Sometimes they're limited, like we have one with a local eye company, but it only takes 3 students. But just because that one doesn't fit, we'll definitely have different opportunities for students. And this is the screenshot of the school website. Go to activities, and inside that paragraph where it says activities, you click on activities list, and all the activities come up in addition to the sponsors for each of the clubs. They're there as well. And so we are doing a better job, I think, of making sure the students get the announcements. We have big screens in the hallway where the announcements rotate during the day. And so even if a student is an aviator male, and maybe for an aviator male, they're doing their homework, or they're really not cued into the announcements, if they're just walking down the hallway, they can see that. Like I had a student say, I think I want to be on the bowling team, and I think the coaches are here today. I was like, I saw one of the announcements, so that's great. So once again, an example of how you can get involved and have things for everyone. All righty. Balance. While we're talking about all this, we have to think about with students we're talking about. Make sure you have a good GPA. Get involved. You're going to have these end-of-course tests, and you need to get ready for college. Having balance is extremely important. We want to make sure we are pushing quality versus quantity. It's not about being involved in so many different activities, because we know it's only 24 hours in a day. And sometimes some of the time commitment that goes along with some of these extracurricular activities can be enormous. Like, as we're driving in, you all see the band, they're over there, they're there in the evening. If they're in journalism, if they're trying to put the newspaper to bed, they're here until 8:30, 9 o'clock at night sometimes. And so you want to make sure if that's what they're choosing, they don't need to add K-pop club or magic club or anything like that on top of that, okay? And then for those of you all who have had older children, you may remember when the students are completing maybe like the common application, they're asking for activities, and they have 10 slots. The kids feel like they have to complete all 10 slots. They don't. They just need to list those that they have done and mention why they have done it. Because every time we talk to college admissions, the one thing, a lot of the extra essays they may ask the student to write is, what were you involved in and why? Well, if you have a list of 10 and you're only hitting those, once every other month, you really haven't been intricately involved in that club, okay? So make sure that they have balance, because we want to make sure that we have emotionally healthy students as well. We know that life can throw a lot of different challenges at students, and we don't want them to feel overwhelmed. I gotta look here because I don't know what the next page is. All right, we talked about balance, okay, and then talking points. So one other thing that we just thought was important to mention was, in addition to academics, when the students are asking, when a teacher has to complete a recommendation letter or a rating scale for a student, these are some of the things that they're asking. And I know the print is very small. I'm over 42, and so it's hard to see some of this. One of those are, academic achievement and disciplined work habits. One thing I thought that was interesting was reaction to setbacks. And so these are things that when a student is going back to a teacher and the teacher is trying to say where they rank on that list, whether they're very good or excellent, sometimes that comes with, okay, you did receive a grade on this test that you didn't feel you were going to get. How did you respond to that? Did you tell the teacher, this is ridiculous, everybody missed this question, and I need to make sure I get a B, what do I need to do? Or did you have the approach of, hey, I didn't do as well as I thought I was going to do. Can we go over this? Can we take some time to go over this test? Because the next time I want to learn how to score better. And so those are just some things I think that are important for students and parents to know, that the questions and rating scales that the teachers will be asked. And I think that should, Mr. Millett, right?
I think it is. Let's see if we can get this next slide up. Man, this thing's been tough tonight. Okay, so career exploration is definitely a focus during sophomore year. And so there's some different things as students are looking at careers and things that they may be interested in. And sometimes too, we're talking about 15 and 16-year-olds, it seems kind of far from careers, but in some ways it's never too early to start to get an idea of some things that your students may have interest in. So one thing that students can do is to shadow, and so in some ways this doesn't have to be a long-term thing. It could just be something a half day, just kind of shadowing somebody. Maybe it's within the student's family, or maybe a friend of the family, or maybe you have a contact within a certain career that that might be of interest to that student. As Ms. Mitchell talked about, summer programs that with those extra days in the summer, if the students do have them, that could be a good opportunity to start to explore some careers. We get a ton of opportunities, emails, information, different programs during the summer that we'll receive throughout the year. And so like we talked about, it's going to be on the website under student opportunities, which will be in the counseling area of the website. Career exploration, in some ways we talked about the third part is going to relate a little bit into now that students are going to be at the age of 16, is that there are going to be more job opportunities for them. And I do realize that a lot of students are extremely busy now, like we've talked about, how that they may have other, like extracurricular activities, those kinds of things. And in some ways, though, if they do have the opportunity to, interview for like a job and just kind of explore a first job, I don't know if you guys can remember the first job that you had. I kind of remember mine. I was bussing tables at Chester's Roadhouse. It's an interesting experience. Chester's is no longer there, on Montgomery Road by the Audi dealership. But I learned a lot of different things during that experience. I think it was a sophomore in high school. It was the end of my sophomore year. And so I think that could be a nice opportunity for students to start to look at that as well, if they have time within their schedule. And then that kind of leads me into Overgrad. And so that is a free platform that we have for students and families. And this is a way to explore colleges and careers. And we ask that students as part of the flight plan to do a career survey. We will be talking about this with the sophomores as well soon. And I think that this can help start to give students like some insight when they see the responses back from the surveys. It goes into different career clusters, and so students can start to look at different careers, maybe what kind of education that they need for those careers, kind of the job outlook, do some of the classes that they might be taking, kind of link to those things. And so it just gives them the opportunity to research like the career especially. So this is a student view, and so this is kind of the student page that they would see. And just something to point out as well is that there's something there that's called the GPA calculator. And what is interesting, let's say for instance, your student has a 2.5 going into sophomore year, and that they can click on the calculator and start to look at kind of basic ideas of what kind of grades do I need to maybe get my GPA up to 3.0. What are some different things that I may need to do to accomplish that, and starting to get an idea of what kind of classes that I might need to take. What are some things that I can track as I do look into life after high school? And so on your packet, on the back page area, it's going to be the parent account information. And so you can create your own account to follow what it links to your student's account. And so one kind of caveat with that though is that you do need to ask your student permission for them to let you in to their account. I don't see that being a big issue, but just kind of let you know about that. I think there's 6 steps that you need to do that on there, and so that is on the back page. What's really nice with Overgrad is that they offer a ton of support. So if you do have certain tech questions with that, there is kind of a live answer, spot within the program, and then we can help with those questions as well.
All right, Great Oaks. Great Oaks is a wonderful opportunity that Hamilton County has for students to be able to take classes that we don't offer here. It's really very costly if every school had to offer a welding or cosmetology. It wouldn't be possible. And so we think that Great Oaks is a wonderful opportunity for some of our students. We also recognize sometimes that there's a stigma attached to Great Oaks and Scarlet Oaks, and we thought it was very important to have a Sycamore parent talk about their own personal experience. So we are very fortunate that Chris and Anita Logston decided to honor my request to come here this evening and speak to their students' experience with Scarlet Oaks and Great Oaks. So thank you.
So we're here to talk about our son Raleigh's experience with Scarlet Oaks. And just background, we are both college graduates with 4-year nursing degrees. We've been nurses for 30 years. We have 3 children, and we moved before they were in kindergarten to Sycamore to send them here because we knew what an excellent school district it was. All of our 3 children, they're completely different. Our daughter Alex is, and always has been, 100% college bound. She's 22, she's graduating in April. Our son Vince, he's 20. He was completely ambivalent in high school. Didn't know if he wanted to go to college, was pretty sure he was going to go on a basketball scholarship. Refused any discussion about trade school, even though his older brother had already graduated.
military wasn't an option for health reasons. So he, upon graduation from high school, decided to go to Alaska and work in the fish processing industry for 6 weeks. Came back and promptly went to UC Blue Ash. He could not get into any college because he graduated with a 2.1 and hadn't applied to any colleges. I don't even think he took the ACT or SAT. But anyhow, in 2.5 years, he is going to be graduating with a 4-year degree in college. So long story short, our children have had totally different paths. Raleigh's our oldest son. He's 23, he'll be 24. He had zero interest in college and let us know that from day one. And we were aware that sophomore year was the year that if he was going to go to Scarlet Oaks and get a trade, that he needed to start going there, seeing what it was all about, talking to the counselors. So what drove us to encouraging Scarlet Oaks with him was that we knew he wasn't going to stay in our house after graduation, and he was going to have to afford to live on his own. So, and we didn't want him to apply to a college, and we weren't going to pay for college because we knew he was going to mess it up anyways. And we didn't want him to pay for college and mess it up and then have debt. So, of course, he did not want to even walk in the door of Scarlet Oaks because he wanted to stay here, like she said, it was a stigma. So we sought the guidance of the guidance counselors here and the guidance counselors at Scarlet Oaks. And Chris will tell you what he chose and how it worked out.
So Raleigh, he met a very friendly teacher there at Scarlet Oaks. I mean, the guy put his arm around him, took him in, and kind of held him along the way. But let me take you forward a little bit. So what we really were teaching him was responsibility for himself. So before he turned 21, he was able to purchase his own house with his own money. So we were very proud of him. He was there out in the workforce, taking care of himself and taking care of what he needed to do. So he really made some really good choices along the way. Scarlet Oaks is the beginning of that, as she said. So what Scarlet Oaks will offer, they'll offer some training that possibly will lead to a certification by the end of graduation, or it will lead to maybe possibly a good percentage of that training is required for a certification. So, yeah, he chose plumbing, and that's been a great program for him. So all the homes that you see that are being torn down in our area, many of those he's working on.
One thing was that with grades over at Scarlet Oaks, the classes are rigorous. So he had to take pre-calculus, and he was getting a C, and his teacher, Mr. Oaks, called me and said, Raleigh has to get either an A or a B in all his classes in order to be looked at for an internship while he's in school.
So I'll talk about that. So the internships that they offer, so what they'll do is they'll do academic work in the morning and then have lunch or break away from lunch. And in the afternoons, they'll go to work for about 2.5 hours. And they'll get on-the-job experience. So they have to have a certain academic level. They also have to have transportation. So there was a lot of motivation for him. He had to get another job as well after school, so he could have money to get that car, gas money. So he was getting a good introduction into being in the workforce. And he was learning a lot of communication skills and how to be a good worker, good work ethic. And we just saw that grow and grow and grow.
So the dean of the school tutored Raleigh in pre-calculus because Mr. Oaks' teacher saw a lot of potential and said, I want Raleigh to get into the workforce. So he did. He got a B in pre-calculus and went on from there. Just one other thing, after graduation, high school graduation.
So instead of, they had a beautiful graduation ceremony, impressive the students that were speaking. And then that night, Raleigh says to us, I'm not going to a party, we're going over to Hooters. And so he and some buddies went over to Hooters, and the next day he's up at, 6:30 or 7, he's at work. He's going to work just like that. So, it was a great, proud moment for me. It's been a proud moment, every week.
And then he also went to night school for 3 years for, I don't understand.
For a period of time,
For plumbing.
right after graduation, he had 2 nights a week of night school for about 2 hours at night.
To get his plumbing license. So that took 3 years. They waived 1 year because he was at Scarlet Oaks. And also, he kept, intermittently saying, well, I think I'm going to change my mind on my career. Maybe I'll be a welder. Maybe I'll go to the military. And we said, that's fine. You can go to college now. You can change your career. Just get your plumbing license. You'll be 21 years old. And then you can do whatever you want. So that's our experience.
Thank you. And I know most of you are focused on getting your kids into college, and that's a lot of the anxiety you're planning that. But if you run into a family that's thinking that they have a child that's not thinking about college, the smartest person I went to school with, way back when, did go to a vocational school. She got her LPN degree during high school, and then she went to RN school, and she had a pretty nice summer gig as an LPN. So, anyway, encourage vocations if you think there's somebody that's not really want to pursue the academics. And thanks again.
And they've been so nice to provide their email address if you all have any questions or, want to have continued contact with them. I love them. I had 2 of their kids. I actually didn't have Raleigh. We changed the alphabet, but I had Alex and Vincent. So I just like that they had all different types of students, children, and they were meeting their children's needs. Okay, is it you?
Yeah, I think I'm back up.
Okay.
Let's see what this is going. Oh yeah, just a couple things about the Oaks too, is that we will be, so that sophomores do have the option to visit the Oaks campus in January, and we will do a presentation later on in the fall for the students that do have interest that they can go on that trip to the Oaks campus. Definitely recommend doing it just to see it. Yeah, I think we've had students do diesel mechanics, equine studies, I'm trying to think, graphic design. It really runs the gamut. There's a lot of different opportunities and programs, and those are going to be free of cost to you.
For sure, and I think the other thing also is that when students graduate from Scarlet Oaks, I've worked with students on college applications, and they've gone to college after Scarlet Oaks as well. And so one student, she told me, I just wanted to be able to do hair in school. I want, her peers and friends to come to her to get their hair done. And she knew that was a way to make money, but she went to a 4-year college. So I guess I want people to understand that doesn't mean they can't go. Yes, that's right. They have National Honor Society there as well, because Robert was and ROTC. Thank you. So they know so much. Okay, and then so options after high school obviously are the 4-year degree, 2-year degree, technical school, military employment. Some students are taking gap years as a little more popular than it was in the past, and so a lot of times the students will come to me and tell them what their ideas are. I had a student that did mission work for a year because that was a calling that she had. So there are a lot of different paths to get to where we end up in.
And if you are thinking about military as an option, I am our liaison. So if you do want to meet with a recruiter, or maybe have your student meet with me first to kind of talk about some of the steps within that process, I can do that and be available to help with that. Practice tests. I think we can both kind of talk about this. this one, Ms. Mitchell?
Yeah, so this year, if your student signed up for the PSAT, they'll be taking that October, and I know I should know the date, you guys. It's October 10th, it's right there, sorry.
Yeah,
October
about the 16th.
October 10th. And then if they didn't sign up for the PSAT, they'll take the practice ACT. In addition to the PSAT and/or practice ACT on October 10th, January 16th, all 10th graders will take the pre-ACT. And that is designed for 10th graders. The PSAT test is what students will need to take as a junior to qualify to be a National Merit semifinalist. And this year is the first year Sycamore is paying for all of our 11th graders to take the PSAT, and I'm assuming that that will continue into next year. So just count on every one of your students taking the PSAT next year, which is a practice test for the SAT. And then they'll take, and that's a sample score report. When you see down here under the score of the 51st, that's like the percentile, that's the national percentile ranking. So that can let you know that doesn't mean your child got 50% on the test, it means they scored better than 51% of the other students who took the test in the nation. And for the National Merit semifinalist students, there is typically students score in the 99th percentile, and there's a certain selection index. It changes every year. This year, the selection index is 219. They use some formula to configure it, but when you get your PSAT results, it's on the second page, it's not on this page here. It'll tell you what the selection index is for the students.
And then I like to focus on the fact too that this is a practice test. Practice is that word, because definitely it's going to help you get an idea of some of the students' strengths and weaknesses within that test, and so it gives you the opportunity to focus on those. And let's see, I think it's pretty strong with the different feedback and different things that they do give, very specific. And so with the pre-ACT, I think that you will receive the test back along with the answers that the student had. So that's kind of a nice way to kind of take a look at some things that they may have missed and they may have gotten right. And then with the PSAT, Khan Academy is a very good test prep website for that specific test. And so that is just an example of the pre-ACT score report.
And just to make things confusing, the pre-ACT, the typical ACT test score ranges between 1 and 36. On the pre-ACT, the score range is 1 to 35. I'm not sure why they didn't make it 36. And the same way with the PSAT, the score range for the PSAT is up to 1,600, but on the PSAT, the SAT is 1,600, but on the PSAT, the highest score students can get is 1,570, I think, 1,520. I don't know, I don't think it's 1,600.
And our next slide. Resources. So we have the counseling website, okay, which will be inside the school website, and then we have a Facebook page that I think we update weekly, and then we also have a Twitter handle at AIDS Counselors, and then we will be going into Aviator Bus, Rose and Gold. And we are available for individual meetings and assistance. Or is that anything to add to that?
The one thing I will say with the individual meetings, I asked students today, I said, how do you think is a way you can get in touch with me and Mr. Millett? Email us, fill out a yellow form, come by our office. The one thing that drives me insane is when students say, I came by your office like 3 times and you weren't there. Do I have ESP? How did I know you were there? Write your name on my board or fill out a yellow pass so that I can know that I need to meet with you. And So we just encourage students to just make sure if they're dropping by and we're not there. I do have another responsibility around my AIDS Academy, Tuesday mornings and Wednesday afternoons. So I'm physically not in the building, but obviously I will get to your student as soon as I can, but they just need to let me know that they need to see me. And the other thing I always try and remind them is one of me and 300 of them. And so it maybe isn't going to be instantaneously that I see them, but I will see them as quickly as I can.
So next steps,
Yep, this focus on the grades, end of year strong. As we said, encourage them to be connected, but make sure they have balance. It's important to start that discussion at home, just about what their plans are after high school. Because sometimes you'll be very surprised at what maybe you have in mind, what they have in mind, maybe two very different things. So it's important to start having those conversations. And, volunteering and doing those other things we talked about. And then it's not too early to even schedule a college visit. You can go to any college website and they will show you how to do a visit. And we do have college reps that will come in typically during lunch and meet with our students. Most of the time it's juniors and seniors that are there, but occasionally we might have a 10th grader that might also sit in one of those visits.
yes, and students can access that list through the school website in regards to college visits.
All right, so obviously, we're here for questions. If you all have any general questions you want to ask now, feel free to do so. If not, just know you can contact us via email. And thank you so much for coming tonight. We appreciate it. Oh, here's a question.
Actually, so my daughter was a senior a couple years ago. There was a Facebook page. Hi, my daughter was a senior a couple years ago, and we had a Facebook page. It was just Sycamore High School class of 20, whatever, parents page, and I found it incredibly helpful. So there wasn't one out there, so I created it.
Okay.
So it's not like it's coming from an official source, but we just found that over the 2 or 3 years that our kids were in school, it was really great to have like a parents forum and a Facebook page. So just go out there and just look at it. It's just Sycamore High School class of 2021 parents. I know it's long, but there's only one of it. And just like it, and then, again, I'm not an administrator or anything, I'm just a parent that found it really, really helpful. And so just join it and then add stuff in there that you find is helpful. So that's it.
Thank you so much. Any other general questions you all have? Yes, ma'am. You all know my shoes aren't the greatest today.
I should have traded with you, Rose.
Do we have to do anything for the sign up, or are they signed up automatically for the pre-SAT and ACT?
Very good question. If your child did not pay for the PSAT, they're automatically signed up for the pre-ACT. I'm sorry, for the practice ACT on October 10th. So you don't need to do anything. Any other general questions?
So on overgrad, I noticed that the students have the list of classes as well as grades, in addition to the survey that you were talking about. Do the students or parents have to manually input their grades and transcript and classes, or does that automatically come from Sycamore and go directly to overgrad?
I know that the grades are added.
The grades, that's how the GPA is there, because they do have that information, but when we asked students last year to do a 4-year plan, they do have to click each class that they've taken to do that 4-year plan. But the grades themselves, each individual grade for each class is not accessible on overgrad, but their GPA is. Just the total GPA.
So if they want to look, because there's a part where you can kind of look at details of classes, the grades, semester 1, 2, final, you have to enter that manually, right? Is that what you're saying? I mean,
I'm not 90% certain that those individual grades are not listed there, but I could be wrong. That's a question I have not had, but
just to put it in context, is I have a junior too, so her grades for ninth grade were there, but I didn't see the grades for 10th grade, and I hadn't even gotten to look at my sophomores. That's gonna lower priority.
Well, but those were in last year.
But tonight, before you leave, we'll look at that. I can let you look at it on my end. I can log in, okay? Yeah, and so that's a good point about the grades being inputted in. I will often, that's why I know, I'm pretty certain they're not available. I will email students a PDF of their transcript, and that's why we kind of send the transcript home every year for students to have. But because I know for some schools, they do have to manually enter each grade they've earned for every class if they're applying to certain colleges. Like, for example, Ohio State, even though we send an official transcript, the student have to manually enter in each grade they've earned each semester. We'll look into that and see if we can get that on there. Any other general questions?
Sycamore has a lot of great things happening after school, but I'm a single parent and I work until 6. Is there ever been any consideration of a late bus?
Yes, often. We just, unfortunately, we do not have that. So thank you for that. We will take that to our district office about the bus. That is one thing that I wish we had an after-school activity bus, but unfortunately, we do not.
a 14-year-old in an Uber.
Yes.
You have the list of requirements for Ohio for graduation written in here. Do you have a list of suggested requirements if we have a college-bound student? Like if colleges would like a certain number of credit hours for foreign language, is there another?
I would say the only difference in what we require for graduation as to what colleges will look for is 2 to 3 years of that foreign language. Everything else, we make sure the students have 4 academic classes, English, math, science, social studies, or maybe they might decide their senior year they want to take 2 social studies instead of a science, but we make sure they have those 4 requirements. So it's just a general good basis to make sure they have 4 academic classes, which are English, math, science, social studies, or global language every year.
Question off the language. If they wanted to take, if they took it in 7th and 8th grade and they wanted to take that off to change their GPA, how does that affect what colleges look at in terms of number?
Okay, so Sycamore does give the option of students to remove their only their global language class. The reason why it's only global language is because in the junior high, you all basically students do not have an option but only to take global language. For math, that's a choice, and so that can't be taken off. But as far as how colleges look at that, I have had several students to do that because they didn't like the grades they earned, and I've never had a question from a college because typically they're in the 3rd level of the language when they're in high school. So the assumption will be made that they took Spanish 1-2 or French 1-2 somewhere else. So it doesn't negatively impact them. Any other general questions? Well, thank you so much. We know it's a lot to ask you all to come in the evening. Hopefully you found it very helpful.